welcome back. BB here, and as promised, I'm bringing you part two of this collage painted spread in my small 5x5 journal. And I really am excited to show this to you guys because it's so nice to be able to add on to a page, or in this case, I'm going on the right side, and still make it feel very cohesive with the first side and that you can really bring things all together. It's okay if you stop midway through. It's okay if you only feel like doing one side at a time. There are ways to make things feel very cohesive. And you'll see I'm not using the exact same papers I used on the left side, but I will bring in elements that make it feel like we are traveling from the left to the right and everything flows together very seamlessly. So as always, I'm gonna link the supplies that I use down below. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel if you aren't already. That really helps me out. And I'm just going to start out with collage on this one. So I did do just a few little tiny little scribbles, but on the last one, I started with some more marks and then the paint and then came in with collage. So I thought it would be fun to kind of change up the order in which I do things. And I think this goes to prove to you and to myself that there is no right or wrong. You do not have to stick to the same thing every time. You can change it up and see how it goes and still make things integrate really beautifully. So since there was only a few collage pieces on the left, I decided let's go with a few more on the right side. So that really is starting out as my base. But since my theme for this journal is black and whites and neutrals and kind of soft earth tones with an emphasis in collage, it is kind of fun to bring in more of those collage features for this right side. And I'm really sticking with those neutral color schemes, those neutral papers here. I'm using a wide variety, and these are just scraps that I have on hand. They're from old books and like music, dictionaries, text, all of that good stuff. I even have a receipt in there, and I'm not being too picky here. I tend to work on a grid, and that's just something that I find myself doing, but that's not a right or a wrong thing to do. And I'm just wanting to fill up some of the space a little bit more. So the other side, I filled up a lot of that space with paint to start, and on this one, I'm filling up a little bit more with some collage. Now, once I get to a place that I'm relatively happy with, I'll go ahead and get out the same color of paint that I was using before because I think it's just going to flow together really beautifully if I do it that way. So I'm just squirting out some paint for me to use, and with a dry brush, I'm going to start putting on some of that color. So I'm going to go in and in fact write over some of that collage. I'm okay if not everything shows. I know that there's going to be things poking through and some will be more emphasized than others, and that's really the way that I want it here. This is such a light color of paint and it's quite translucent. It's just a cheap craft paint, so it doesn't have a real heavy body to it. So I'm just using it to get some of that same color down. And now, since I didn't leave as much white on this side, I'm coming in with white gesso using the same brush I already was, and I did not dry things between layers. And so it is going to start mixing a little bit with the color that's already there. And I really like that look. So I'm just having those collage pieces and the paint kind of melt into the background a little bit. So things are not standing out on their own as much. None of this that I'm doing here in these first layers is meant to be the star of the show. Since I am kind of thinking of these two sides together now, I already have a big element on the left with that texturized fabric and stitching. So I don't need to do too much on this right side to take away from what I've already done. So I'm going in with my dry brush with some gesso and making sure that those edges really feel integrated. I never want something to look like it was just placed on top as an afterthought. So I'm going to keep going here until I'm satisfied with how much white I'm bringing back in. adding in some more of those scribble marks because they do end up getting covered up from those beginning stages. And I want to bring in some of the marks that I did on the left side and bring them to the right side. This is going to be one of the main things that make this spread feel cohesive. I'm not doing the exact same things over on the right hand side. But if we can take some of those key elements and bring them over, it's gonna make it feel like we did this all at one time and it was meant to be a full spread. I'm just thinking about how many I want to do here. It's really easy to go overboard at this stage with art marks. I have a tendency to have them kind of get away from me. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I've started to do more and more some art marks in the beginning layers, because I know at least half of them are going to get covered up and it's not going to be quite as overpowering as if I did a ton of art marks right at the end. Okay, so after looking at that, it definitely does feel like there's quite a few on there. So I'm going to come back in with some more white paint and see if I can integrate things even more, kind of push stuff to the back a little bit, and other stuff is going to come to the foreground. I'm liking the mixture that's just on my brush with some of that tan and the white coming through. And sometimes it just means partially covering some of those marks that I made, and other times just letting them fully be covered or um, fully be shown. So by half covering them, it kind of makes it feel like they're coming from the back. Since I didn't do any on the first stages of this one, I did wait more towards the end. And although I did the left side of the page at a different time than the right side, there's nothing that says I can't come back and do more on the left. So I'm liking kind of the ghostly look that the translucent white has over on the right-hand side. So I want to bring some of that to the left side as well to just give it the same kind of essence and appearance. And some of that tan paint was just looking a little too opaque for me, and so bringing in just a tiny bit of white on my brush allows some of that to integrate even further. So at this point, I think that I'm pretty much done with what's happening on the page. I'm happy with it. As I took a few more moments to look at it, I did feel like there was something that was lacking. So I have this little painted circle that I did on a piece of translucent paper, probably a deli paper, something really thin. And I'm just going to kind of add it as a little element on the right side. I knew that I didn't need another fabric piece on the right. So this is just something a little bit to add to the overall aesthetic of the page. Last up, what I'm going to do is bring in some white highlights with my white correction pen. By far my favorite white pen to add in white marks because it marks over everything. And I love the raised texture that's left once it dries. This is just like the correction fluid that you would use out of the bottle, and it's just in a pen format. So that's going to be linked down below as well. Definitely one of my favorite supplies that I have in my arsenal. So since I'm doing some of these on the right, I'm going to put them on the left as well. And I very easily can go overboard with these also, but the white is kind of nice. It acts as just like a little highlight and catches the light a little bit more. I'm having these dots that I'm doing kind of travel across the page, and really they're going to make your eye go from one side to the other. So I'm using these spots as a way to lead the viewer's eye. I'm happy with how this spread turned out. Make sure that you go back and watch part 1 if you haven't done so already. Tell me what you think. How do you like how this turned out? What are your thoughts on doing the left side and the right side at opposite times and seeing how they come together? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next week.